Hello dear learner, I welcome you to the lecture 4 of week 7 and the title of today's lecture is an extension of lecture 3 and we have been discussing about the equality difference debate. We have already understood the meaning of this debate in the lecture 3 and today we will further understand the evolution of this debate and also we will discuss some more aspects of this debate. Then we will understand the pro-woman position of the difference debate or the difference feminism, and we will also discuss some more theories and the theorist of the difference principle. And at the last, we will try to conclude with what we have understood in today's lecture. Now, when we talk about the evolution of the equality difference principle, we have already studied to a certain extent in our earlier lecture. And now we can see that in the 1970s, the difference theories made a resurgence. So, there was a resurgence or renewed interest of feminists in the theories of difference. Initially in radical cultural feminism, it translated to female supremacism and to the moral superiority of women, with ideas such as sisterhood, political lesbianism, and also the issue of the separation from men. So, now we can see that how the implication of the difference principle led to the discussion about so many other issues which were coming to the forefront during that period, and especially the question of sisterhood. Feminists were talking about village and all woman world with the exclusion of men, and they were talking about the separation from men. So, we were talking about some of the idea like the issue of sisterhood, and also there was talk about the political lesbianism. The issue of lesbianism were increasingly coming to forefront and people were asking for building certain rights around those issues. So, naturally, when we were talking about the difference principle, then naturally we are debating or we are discussing about the distinctiveness and uniqueness of women. When we are talking about the distinctiveness of women, it is not only we are talking about the qualities or those virtues or those attributes which make a woman different from man, but also there was talk about the supremacy of these values or the supremacy of these qualities over the qualities which are possessed by men. And that was another development which was taking place alongside the issue of the difference principle. It was also argued that women had very different attributes to their bodies from men. So, it was not only at the level of ideas or at the level of qualities, but also in terms of their body. It was argued they had completely different attitudes with respect to their bodies than men. Now, the reproductive capacities of female were seen as inculcating positive life affirming attitudes in them, whereas the male were seen as caught up in the negative life denying aggression, ambition and destructiveness. Now, this is a very common distinction or proposition which we find being made by various scholars and people across the world, where they say that women, because of their reproductive capacities, they are endowed with more love, care, then feeling of compassion and nurturance, which are very essential. And nowadays it has been recognized that even in the sphere of politics and economic life, these qualities are very important so that we can have a better leadership or we can have a better management of things. Whereas the male have been seen as caught up in the politics of aggression or in war or in the pursuit of ambition and in following the policies which has resulted in so much of destruction. So, these have been considered as life negating qualities or life negating attributes or destructive attributes which the men have been pursuing for. whereas the qualities which were associated with women were considered as productive and constructive, or you can say they were considered as life affirming attitudes. So, therefore, we can see that it led to the difference principle not only led to the distinction of qualities between men and women, but it also led to somehow giving more importance or supremacy to the qualities or the feminine qualities rather than the qualities which are possessed by men or the masculine qualities. Now, this particular theme was taken by eco-feminists also, who often located the environmental crisis in negative male virtues which saw progress in victory over nature. Ecofeminism, I have explained that how certain virtues, certain qualities which are associated with women make them more closer to the nature, make them more organically in a way interdependent or related with their nature. It has been argued by the ecofeminists that women have the qualities and the attributes because of their various domestic responsibilities to conserve and preserve the environment. They also have the wide knowledge of biodiversity which has helped them in bringing about the preservation of the environment. Therefore, the ecofeminists have argued for giving importance to the attributes which are possessed by women when talking about environmental protection. Even in the policy making, the ecofeminists like Vandana Shiva, Maria Mais have argued that how by giving importance or by including women in the policy making processes, so much of knowledge about biodiversity, so much of efforts at the local level towards environmental conservation can be achieved. So, therefore, we find that a very important strand of feminism, ecofeminism, have talked about the distinctive qualities or the attributes possessed by women and how it is beneficial for conservation of the environment. Now, these differences of women constituted a distinct way of life and thought. Now, it is very important to understand that it is not simply the differences in qualities, but how these qualities have made important impact on the way they think and the way they lead their life and about also their behavioral and thought processes. So, it is not simply at the level of ideas that there is differences, but also the difference principle or the theorists have argued that there is a difference also in terms of behavior, also in terms of actions, and this is manifest in social, economic and political lives also. Now, as we have already seen that amongst the proponents of the difference feminism, there is a tendency to give more importance to women or the attributes which are possessed by women. Now, the difference feminists argue for acknowledging the political and societal relevance of the distinction between sexes. So, it is not simply they are arguing for differences for its own sake, but what is the political relevance of those differences? What are the societal relevance of those differences? And how, if we harp upon the difference principle, then we can understand the contribution made by women, whether in terms of qualities or whether in terms of the activities which they are performing in the society, what role or what contribution they are paying with respect to those qualities. That also needs to be understood. They assert the existence of inherent variances between men and women on a psychobiological plane. So, if they try to constitute a psychobiological plane, then there is a lot of variation, there is a scale of variation between men and women in terms of their biological attributes and also in terms of their psychological attributes. And therefore, it needs to be recognized that we cannot understand the gendered gap in terms of only binary concepts, but we have to understand it as a continuum of shade or a continuum of differences in the society, whether when we talk about with respect to the sexual motivation or whether we are talking with respect to the masculine and feminine qualities which are possessed by men and women. Embracing and commemorating these distinctions is deemed essential for the advancement of women's freedom. Now, the difference theorists, since they have argued for the importance of the distinctiveness of women, therefore, they have also debated that if women develop as per their innate qualities, if women do not abandon their innate qualities and try to develop as per their own inner nature, then there are chances that women will be better able to exercise their autonomy, their freedom, and better able to achieve their self development and also excel in the public sphere, whether in the field of politics or whether in the field of economy. Cultural feminists emphasize the distinctive experiences of women and foster a feeling of solidarity through events such as childbirth, motherhood, and menstruation. So, cultural feminists, since they draw their essence or they draw their attributes by connecting it with culture, so naturally they argue that culturally and also socially, the distinctive experiences of women, they help in combining or they help in uniting the women across various sectors or various countries across the world, and there is a feeling of solidarity because of these unique experiences. For example, the experiences of giving childbirth, the experiences of motherhood, the experiences of upbringing of the child, also the experiences of taking care of the family, and also the experiences of menstruation. So, these are some of the experiences which are unique and distinct to women, and they are shared, and these shared experiences helps in building a solidarity or an organic unity amongst the women across the world. The maternal thinking's diverse yet singular virtues were underscored. Now, we know that for the upbringing of the child and the functions which are associated with the process of reproduction, there are certain values which are associated with it. Now, it has been argued that these values have been underscored. You know, the importance of the emotion, the importance of care, the importance of compassion, the importance of nurturance in bringing about or caring the child is so essential. It is not only about the importance of these values in the child bearing and caring function, but also in terms of caring for the family, these values are immensely important. Imagine how our lives will be if there is no person who cares and who loves us. So, therefore, these virtues were underscored and they are very, very important. Nancy Shodro dwelt into the exploration of women's individual personalities and psychological makeup. So, a study or exploration have been made of women's personality and also her psychological makeup. Some contended that women, in contrast to men, exemplified virtues such as honesty, emotional sensitivity, selflessness, collaboration, nurturing, and pacifism. So, in contrast to men, because I am giving again and again the example of political leadership, because a number of studies have been undertaken to illustrate that the women provide better political leadership in comparison to men. So, there has been a debate whether it is true or not. That is the virtues of honesty, then emotional security or the emotional sensitivity, selflessness, collaboration, then nurturing, pacifism or non-violent nature. These are all qualities which are very, very important for constituting an effective leadership, and not only in the field of leadership, but also in the sphere of economic activity, in the social sphere. These values are very, very important. So, it is contended that since women possess these values as an innate nature, so therefore, women are placed in a better position to deal with complex issues or to deal with conflict situation. Carol Gilligan, another very important feminist thinker, have formulated her concepts distinguishing women's ethic of care from the masculine ethics of justice. So, she had made a distinction between two types of ethics: the ethics of justice, which is the ethics or principles which are associated for doing work in the public sphere, and they are different from the ethics of care, which are a set of principles which are needed for doing certain functions in the domestic sphere. And therefore, she attributed the ethics of care with women and ethics of justice with men, and then she developed her theory based on that. And we know that with the ethics of care are associated values or ethics like care, sustenance, then sensitivity, compassion, love, etc. Rudick and Elstein proposed that integrating maternal values and perspective into the public sphere could yield significant advantage. Just imagine a public sphere, for example, an office where we are incorporating these values which are associated with the ethics of care, like the value of compassion, then the value of care, then the value of giving to others. These are some of the very important qualities. If they are incorporated and recognized in the public sphere, they can make the life of public sphere so much cooperative rather than so much competitive, which we find in the present. So, in order to make the public sphere more cooperative, just we find in the case of family, it is essential that we incorporate a different set of values or ethics which are required for the functioning in the public sphere. Now, during the 1980s and 90s, feminism witnessed numerous discussions revolving around the concept of maternal thinking and caregiving. So, during the starting from 1970s, coming to 1980s and 90s, we find that feminism is talking about how to develop all these maternal qualities and care, whether they are important in the public sphere, and in which respect we can adopt these ethics and values so that we can enrich our life. Carol Gilligan and Nancy Shodro psychoanalytic examination of the unique attributes of the female psyche led to the notion that due to their upbringing in a gendered structured society where women primarily nurtured children, women possess a distinct moral outlook of that world. So, ultimately it is how a female psyche is developed. A female psyche is developed because of the particular upbringing, of the particular way in which she is being brought up in a gendered family, in a gendered structured society where women primarily nurture children. That actually helps in formulating her distinct moral outlook, way of looking at herself, way of looking at the world, because when a child or a girl child, she watches her mother performing the child bearing and child raising activities and fulfilling the domestic role, then she also incorporates and inculcates those values and those attributes within herself, and that formulates her unique moral outlook about herself and also about her role and responsibilities in the society. So, therefore, the psychoanalytic examination of the female psyche helps in exposing some of the very important role of the process of upbringing and also the process of socialization in molding the outlook and molding the mindset of women. Gilligan particularly posited that women tend to adopt a nurturing approach characterized by altruism, nurturing behavior and selfless. Altruism means doing good to others, and nurturance means that which can nurture. All those activities starting from preparing food, taking care of the family, feeding the baby, they all come under the nurturance activities and selflessness, and all these work are being done not with any selfish motive to earn profit or to earn salary or to derive some material benefits or any other intangible benefits. It is not done with any motive. So, this type of values are very important, and Carol Gilligan argues that these values should be preserved and protected. And it is essential that this nurturing approach should not only be preserved and it should be recognized and given importance, but this should also be adopted in the public sphere, so that our relationship between the individuals in the public sphere becomes more cooperative, it becomes more gentle and compassionate in nature. She associated this tendency what she called the ethics of care, contrasting it with more masculine oriented the ethics of justice. The ethics of justice is associated with the principle of rationality or the principle of discipline, hard work, then neutrality, objectivity, but whereas the ethics of care is associated with emotions rather than rationality, taking care of others, and you know that it is guided by the value of the selflessness, whereas the ethics of justice is guided by more by the interest which are guided by our own selfish motives. So, therefore, it is essential that we understand that how the ethics of care or the ethical values which are associated with the reproductive function, with the child-bearing functions are important. For women, morality was consequently seen as more concerned with the nurturing tendencies, fulfilling duties and nurturing relationship rather than prioritizing the discovery of the correct or optimal principle, adherence to regulation and emphasizing rights and equity, which were perceived as traits of ethics of justice. So, the similar point I was making just now, that we have to understand the two different types of ethics which are essential for the different type of activities which are performed in the private sphere and the functions which are performed in the public sphere. Whereas, the ethics of care principle says that we have to give more importance to nurturing, fulfilling of duties rather than asking for rights, then giving more importance to relationship, and these are given more importance than the discovery of what is correct or what is optimal principle. See, the ethics of justice talks about finding out what is right and what is correct by using the principle of rationality. Now, absence of rationality or not always working according to rationality is a very, very important attribute of doing work or functioning in the private sphere. So, that is very important difference, because one is talking about love, emotions over what is right and what is rational. So, there is a difference, and sometimes when you are making certain decisions, the importance given to love and care is much more, or it is much more needed in comparison to what is needed as per the rational considerations. And we have also seen the ethics of justice, it comprises adherence to rules, emphasizing more on rights rather than duties, emphasis on equity, on discipline, on rationality. These all are considered as ethics of justice. So, therefore, the two different ethics, and the ethics of justice and ethics of care, they form the cornerstone of the difference principle. Then two other thinkers, Sarah Rudick and J.B. Elston, contended that women were predominantly engaging in nurturing and safeguarding the well-being of the children. Now, this is a known fact that across the world and civilization, women have been engaged and doing the nurturance function and engaged in the so-called domestic responsibilities. They propose that individuals who embrace maternal thinking and prioritize responsibilities to children and families could significantly reshape societal values, potentially fostering an ethical polity centered on compassionate politics. See, there are two words which has been used here. One is the ethical polity and second is the compassionate polity. Now, if we try to analyze the present state of the politics and try to analyze vis-a-vis these two qualities, then we find that our present politics is far removed from these two essential qualities or the two important qualities. So, there is no place for compassion in politics, and the role of ethics is reducing day by day, or the importance of ethical values is reducing day by day in politics. So, now it is stressed that by the inculcation of these values, it will be possible to make politics more saner, or we can include more sanity in politics, we can make it more moral, we can make it more cooperative rather than competitive and power oriented as we now find it in the present. Now, the concept of maternal thinking faced strong opposition from civic feminism perspective. Mary Dees took a more conventional, almost liberal feminist position, rejecting the significance of distinction between male and females. So, this is another strand of criticism which we find against the difference principle. So, there is no one strand, but there are multiple strands. Then coming to some of the criticism. Difference based arguments depended on fundamental oppositions that actually necessitated deconstruction. The definition of male and female needed to be postponed. Similarly, an oversimplified essentialism regarding femininity concealed various potential frameworks and understanding. So, giving more importance to the essential or you can say the essential attributes of feminism or women have led to undermining or ignorance of various other frameworks and understandings which are equally important to study the position of woman and the contribution she is making towards society. Scholars like Judith Butler elaborated on a significantly more intricate cultural comprehension of gender and sexuality. So, this is another shade where to understand the gender and sexuality, the cultural component has been brought into the picture by Judith Butler. Then the culturally shaped body undergoes the process of the performativity, characterized by the repetition of stylized bodily action that attribute a supposedly natural ontological status to the sexed body. The same action when we are performing since our childhood, it leads to a stereotype or it starts to appear as natural, because if you perform a certain activity. Similarly, various gender perspective and gender behavior, because they are continuously being performed, they start assuming a naturalized status, or they start to have a type of sexed existence or sexed body in this case. Another critique of difference theory argued that essentializing women pose the risk of relegating them back into supposedly natural rule within the family. So, too much emphasis on essentialism, too much emphasis on distinctiveness will actually destroy or destruct the achievements which have been made by the liberal feminist, or you can say the equality proponents, who have argued for equal rights and who have argued for relieving women of the domestic responsibilities so that they can come out and participate in the public sphere. In this context, the difference, the gender gap and the essentialism can be seen as tools within the patriarchal arsenal. So, I think this is the extreme form of criticism which can be made against difference principle, and it is that in the name of differences, in the name of essentialism, in the name of this gender gap, it is another tool or it is a weapon in the hands of the patriarchy to continue the subordination or to continue the current status quo in the society. Now, the essentialist stance advocated by Elston and Rudick were labeled as conservative pro-family feminism. This point we have already discussed. Essentialism was criticized for regressing to outdated stereotypes of gender roles for women. The presumed disparity between men and women overlooks the diversities among women themselves, including factors such as age, race, socio-economic status, cultural ethnicity, nationality, sexual orientation and marital status. So, by giving more importance on the differences between men and women, we ignore or we overlook that there are so many differences within women which are also essential to study the type of oppression they are facing in the society. So, with this I come to the end of the lecture, followed by a series of questions which are based on the topics which we have covered. How maternal thinking could potentially reshape the societal values? What is meant by the term that is performativity in the context of Judith Butler's work? In what way does essentialism risk reverting to outdated stereotypes which concerns women's role? So, with this I come to the end of this lecture. Hope you have enjoyed it. Thank you very much.